right, so the recording has started. I'm just going to make sure that it is recording from the right channel. Sometimes I forget to switch, to use the right channel for recording, and it becomes, like silent movie. You can still see what's going on the screen, but there won't be any voice. For a class like this, it's not really that essential, but it will still be useful to include my voice. So here's Google Chrome. I'm going to take row, okay? So when you get the row sheet, just initial next to your name on the right column, because I'm using 5 columns for 5 different days of class meetings. So just put it under today's date, and that's how I keep track of whether people make it to a certain class or not. The first class is mandatory. In other words, people who miss today's class, I have to drop them. That's a district policy. So you guys are safe because you're here. So I'm gonna let you guys. Well, I'll just wait a little bit because it seems like people are still streaming in. So instead of people asking me to for the row sheet, I'll just wait a little bit here.
That's a district-wide policy? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is a district policy that if people miss the first class, then they're dropped automatically.
I thought it was just they could be dropped.
No, it's they have to be dropped. So I am required to drop people if they miss the first class.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So here comes a bunch of people. I think they were waiting outside because I let all of you in, and then and then for a certain amount of time nobody was outside, so they thought there's nobody inside. There's one more spot over there and one more spot over there. Okay, well that's about right. I mean, this is about right. I usually have people, like sitting along this aisle, for the first, 2 or 3 class meetings, because for whatever reason, I just have, a lot of people on wait list for this class. Okay, so now I think most people are here. I will pass the row sheet. It has the names of people who are already enrolled in class, as well as people who are on wait list. It's double-sided, so make sure you flip over to the other side if you're on wait list to find your name. If your name is not on wait list and you're just trying to add to the class, you can append your name after the wait list. At this point, historically speaking, it's pretty hard to get into this class if you're not on wait list. If you're on wait list, we still have to wait until some people have dropped out of the class before I can add people. So I cannot just keep adding people to the class because it's already pretty big. I mean, it's a pretty big class already as it is. Okay, so I'll just pass the row sheet from here. Make sure by the time you get it, initial your name, under today's date, okay, which is a column. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this class. I use Moodle instead of D2L for this class. Moodle is basically another learning management system that is free. It's open source compared to D2L. It's just different. So I'll just go there first. Sorry? It's better? Do you like it better?
I like it much better.
Well, some people like it better. Some people do not like it as much. So it's entirely up to you to decide. But I'm going to use Moodle for this class. So the URL is moodle.losreals.edu. Okay, if you have to remember or write down something in this class, that will be the one that you need to write down because the syllabus is online, the class notes is online, just about everything that I do is online. The other one would be SOMPROFs, SOMEPROFS, because if you miss everything that I talk about today, you can still remember SOMPROFs as a channel on YouTube. Then you can watch the entire lecture again, and that means you'll be able to know where to go, how to sign in and stuff like that as well. So those are the two things. Those two, one URL and one YouTube channel name would be the ones, the stuff that you really have to write down. I'll just write it on the board here, just so that people can write it down. It's SOMPROFs. That's the name of the channel on YouTube. All right, So when you log in, when you use your username, it has to be the one with a W and then followed by 7-digit, a 7-digit student ID, and then you can use the same password that you log into the email as well as D2L and all the other district-wide resources. So it's the same password and the same login for you. But for me, it is a little bit different. So this is how I sign in. Oh, I guess I did not type in the password correctly. I'm waiting for the day when the computer can sample my DNA, as I spit, to the monitor, then it just go, oh, it's you, okay, sign in, no problem. So when you sign in, you will see something similar to this, but not identical, because under my courses, there will be only like one, most people will only see one. If you're taking multiple courses through Moodle, you may see multiple classes here. And this is my Tuesday, Thursday AM class, and once I click that, we'll get into the class. And this is what the class looks like, inside the Moodle. And I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because otherwise it's hard to read. You should see something similar to this, but not identical. I can show you exactly what you should see as a student because I can change my role to a student. Then I can display exactly what you will be seeing. So this is what you will be seeing once you get into the course. It's really just organized by topics, and then within each topic, we have multiple links, and all of these links are basically information that I think will be useful to you, or they are notes that I write, for this class. Okay, so that's your reading material. There are no textbooks in this class, just the stuff that I wrote, that I write for this class. Are there any questions at this point?
Down here.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the topics, are we going at a certain pace or is it self-paced?
You definitely want to keep up with my pace, basically the average pace of the class. But if you want to read ahead of time, there's nothing that will stop you from reading ahead of time, which is also what I recommend. I mean, if you want to go ahead and read a little bit more, hey, that's all good. And we'll get to study habit a little bit later when I go through the syllabus. But they are not locked in any way. All right. So the first thing we want to do is to read the syllabus, and then I'll talk about the syllabus acknowledgement quote-unquote quiz. It's not really a quiz. It's just an acknowledgement form. And this is the syllabus for this particular section. This is section 10887. There's another section at night, tonight that I'm also teaching. That one is also, according to my roster, is also as full as this one. Okay, with the full, wait list of 20 on that one. So if you cannot add to this class, the other one may be just as hard to add into. Course information, stuff that most of these, you can find on in the catalog. The title of this class is Algorithm Design / Problem Solving. Most people see this class as a pre-programming class or a pre-C class, pre-C and C++ class. I don't really see it that way. I see this class as a more general introduction to programming class that is language independent. Okay, so I'm not using C, C++, Java, Perl, Python, or any specific programming language. I'm just talking about the concepts that are most likely common to any programming language that you'll be using in the near future. The description is right out of the catalog, so I'm not going to read this one too much. Student learning objectives are stuff. I don't think the catalog is starting to list these. These are basically things that you should be able to do at the end of this class if you pass this class. Okay, so you should be able to define operators, including arithmetic, comparison, and logical operators, and so on. So I'm not going to go through this list, because there are things here that are kind of obvious, and there are things that are not so obvious because it's supposed to be something that we'll learn in this class. Question? No? Okay. This class has 3 units of lecture. There are no lab units, and we have 54 lecture hours for this particular class. Next would be information about myself. My first name is Tak, T-A-K, and last name is really hard to pronounce. Most people pronounce it as Aoyang. Just call me Tag. Because my last name is really difficult to pronounce, and it doesn't sound like what it's supposed to anyway. So
Oh yeah, how do you pronounce it?
the Cantonese pronunciation of my last name is Ngaoyang, and it involves syllables that are missing in English and even in Mandarin. So even to people who speak Mandarin, it's hard to pronounce.
Can you say it one more time?
Ngaoyang. And it's being recorded too, so you can replay that. The Mandarin version is actually a whole lot easier. It's Ouyang. It's almost like O apostrophe Yang, so in the Mandarin version. But the Cantonese version is a little bit awkward because Cantonese has a lot of syllables that are missing in other languages, even Mandarin itself, which is the official Chinese language. So just call me Tag is fine, no problem. My office is number 7 in Liberal Arts 133. 133 is one aisle over on that side, on my left-hand side. You will see a glass door, okay, that will say BCS, Business and Computer Science Division. Just walk through, that door, and that's the general area. My office is down the hall, and then make a right-hand turn almost at the end, the second last one at the end. Office hours. On Mondays and Wednesdays, my office hours are pretty early, right before my Monday-Wednesday class, which is from 8 to 9 o'clock. That's the office hour time on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's right before this class, which is pretty handy, especially for people who do not have a class before this one, because you can just stop by my office, talk to me about stuff related to this class, and then walk over here for the actual class. On Fridays, I am not on campus, but you can still contact me online. This is not synchronous. This is basically asynchronous. Send me email and so on. And I'll still be able to respond to you on Friday. My phone number is 916-484-8250. If I am not in the office, if you leave a message, it will be sent to me as an email with a voice attachment. So that's really cool, because I can actually get to it anywhere I am. I just click open the file, and it will replay your message. Any questions up to this point? Nope. Yep. Go ahead.
Do you have office hours by appointment?
I can do that too. If you cannot make it to the office hour listed here, I'm actually in my office more than my office hours for classes. I have what they call coordinator hours. So if you can make it to to my coordinator hour, that's fine. You can actually look at my door chart to find out when I'll be in my office. If you want to make sure that I'm in my office at a certain time so that you can talk to me, just send me an email ahead of time so that I will be sure that I won't be somewhere else during that time. Okay. My email is not a arc.losreals.edu email address. It is drtag2013fall@gmail.com. The reason why I'm starting to use this kind of email address is because I'm getting a lot of junk mail to my usual mailboxes. So messages will scroll off the screen just like that. And it's really hard for me to filter what is class related, what is junk mail, what is family related, what is all the other stuff that I'm getting. But this is specific to my classes and only specific to one semester. So this way I'm not getting a mixture of email messages from different sources, and that makes it a lot easier for me to get to your messages quicker and more difficult to lose the messages because it won't be scrolling off as quickly. So use this particular email address. The online classroom, we already talked about this. So it's moodle.losreals.edu. Are there any questions about this slide?
Curious how you made the voicemail go to your email.
It's automatic. It has to do with how we set up the PBX system here on campus. So it's already set up.
I think you can do the same thing with Google Talk, by the way.
That's what
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar to Google Talk. Basically everything is already digital. So the telephone, the quote-unquote telephone, is nothing more than a mic and a speaker, in place of an actual computer, but it's connected to a computer system. All right, moving on. Section-specific information. This is the class meeting time and the final exam time for this class is on the 19th of December. The time is 10:15 to 12:15. So you might want to mark it on your calendar to make sure that that block of time is available for the final exam of this class. It's a 2-hour final exam, a little bit longer than the class meeting. Any questions about this slide? Okay, moving on. Class policies, basically what I expect, behavior expectation in my classes. There are 3 excuses that I have to accept, so that people can make up for, homework assignments or tasks and stuff like that. The first one is obvious, okay? The student himself or herself is sick, but I'm only required to accept excuses with a doctor's note. Okay, so that is really important. Is if you get sick, you cannot make it to the class, you still want to get a doctor's note of some kind, or a nurse, the notes from a nurse to basically say that yes, you are sick on that day and you are not fit to go to class. We'll talk about this a little bit later. But if you're on campus, when you're sick and you cannot, get to your personal, top doctor to get a note, because the nurse on campus can give you a note like that also. The other 2 types of duty, jury duty and also military duty, are also required. I'm required to accept those as excuses. But in those cases, I need a copy of the summon in case of a jury duty summon, and I need a copy of the notice in case it is a military duty. Now, in the case of a military duty, I'm not familiar with that. Does it usually just involve a few days, or would it involve like a extended length of time? Extended length of time. If it is an extended length of time, you might want to consider other options, because if you're going to miss, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, and during those 2 or 3 weeks we have one of our exams, then you might want to consider getting an incomplete grade instead of getting extensions to your homework and also your test.
It could easily be a year, kind of depending on what.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of have to, I think jury duty can be as long too, even longer, depending on the case. So, when you get, into those, sticky situations, we'll talk about it. Attendance. This is interesting because most people do not know it. Excessive absence may result in a student being dropped from the class by instructor. And this is actually quoted from the college catalog. So I did not make any of this up. A student may be dropped from any class when that student's absences exceed 6% of the total hours of class time. For this class, this is a 16-week class, so missing 2 class meetings will be more than 6% already, and it will be quote-unquote eligible for being dropped. That only counts unexcused absences. Okay, if you are excused, like you're sick or you have jury duty and stuff like that, it doesn't count to this 6%. Okay, so you really have to make sure that you let me know ahead of time that you may not be able to make it to a class because of certain reasons. Okay. If a student is absent because of illness verified by the health center or personal physician, in other words, you can go to the health center on campus if you're sick and ask the nurse over there to write you a note and say, okay, this person, I'm sick on that day and I will be unfit for classes. Okay. The absence must be excused and the student be allowed to make up work missed. All right. So any questions about the attendance part? The last part here applies to this class because we have a face-to-face class here. I will most likely just use a row sheet to determine who's here and who's not, and I'll just be counting number of absences going through the row sheet. Are there any questions about attendance for this class? No questions? Right. Let's move on to classroom and lab behavior. The general idea is, you just don't want to do something that is distracting to other students. Okay, that's basically the bottom line. But we also have specific rules for this classroom. If you kind of turn your head back to the back of the classroom, it says no food, drinks, phones, kids. Okay. If you want to bring in plain drinking water like that, it's okay. Okay, because in case you spill, it's just plain water. It will dry up, doesn't leave any stain behind. It's not sticky. So that's okay in this classroom. I can let that happen. It's no big deal. On the other hand, if it is something that is like soft drink that can be sticky and sugary, coffee that can stain, tea that can stain, you can have it in the classroom, but the container has to be closed. Okay, so if you have it closed, that's fine, but don't drink it during the class. Any behavior in the classroom or lab, this class has no lab component, that interferes with the teaching or learning is not going to be tolerated. So I will ask people to kind of stop chatting. This includes disruption, bullying, excessive chatting, and so on, and of course cell phones. And that's what I was doing, well, not here, in here a little bit earlier, but I have an Android app called Silence Scheduler. I'm pretty sure there are equivalent apps, for iPhones and other phones. What it does is you can set up on what days in the week, during what time, the phone will turn silent automatically. So you just set it, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. At the end of each period or silence period, it will turn the phone or turn your ringer back on again. So that's the nice part, is you don't have to worry about turning your phone off but forgetting to turn it back on. So later on when people try to call you, you don't know that people are trying to call you. I have used it for more than a year, and I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, it doesn't do exceptions, so if there's a holiday, the scheduler will still work the same way because you cannot set up exceptions. But for the most part, for classes, I think it works really well. No eating or drinking unless it is allowed. So in this class, drinking water, plain water is okay. Non-compliant students or participants will be asked to leave the classroom. Moving on, conduct code. This is a really long one, but what it's really talking about is cheating, or what I consider to be dishonest in a class setting. Academic dishonesty, by my definition, which is actually consistent with a lot of schools and districts, is basically an act of deception in which the student claims credit for work or effort of another person, or use unauthorized material or fabricated information in any academic work. That's pretty much it. The actual mechanism is not important. The most important part is it is an act of deception to demonstrate competency that the student does not possess. That's the bottom line. Any of those cases, may be reported to administration. We'll start with my boss, and then he can decide, where to go from there. Any work involving dishonesty will not receive any points. Okay. Activities do not count for attendance. The instructor may ask suspects to do additional work or explain submitted work in order to determine whether the submitted work is done by that person or not. I have had cases, unfortunately, where a student will turn in perfectly done homework. Okay, when I say perfect, it means it is not only what I would do, it is what my best students would do. Okay, but that's okay. I mean, people can be perfect and turn in really good homework assignments. The problem was that particular student was performing really, really badly in exams. Okay, so we have homework assignments up here, and exams are basically zeros. Okay, practically zeros. So I had to ask that student to do homework assignments right next to me, and then just say, okay, here's the a little task for you to do. Show me how to complete it. And the student could not do it. And then later on, what I found out was this is really interesting. I could not find out why, and I cannot accuse someone without evidence, right? Just because someone has really good homework assignments, but poor score in exam is not enough by itself to indicate dishonesty, because some people may be super nervous in exams and quizzes, so they don't really perform as well as when they have time and can actually relax and do their homework assignments. But later on, the student gave me a form to sign. It is for Beacon tutoring, and I did not even suspect anything at that point. I asked the student, so who's your tutor? Because for that particular class, there weren't a lot of tutors available for that class. And she mentioned the name, and I go, oh, okay, I remember that name, I remember that student. He was a really, really good student of mine. And then it just clicked in my mind, it's like, oh, so he has been writing those programs that you have been turning in. So it's a interesting case, and I don't think she intentionally tried to be dishonest, but her grade still does not reflect her performance. So she did not pass the class in the end. I mean, not because I put zeros into the homework assignments, but because the homework assignments was only a small fraction of all the grades, but she flunked all of the exams, and that by itself already gave her a D, and she could not pass the class. And by default, which applies to this class, all work are expected to be independently done and also done originally. That means no copying from other people, using test banks, and so on and so forth. Okay, here is a question. I will let you guys answer the question, or at least think about it. And it actually happened. I was teaching another class, and for that particular semester, I was required to use a textbook that has online test banks. So for the final exam, I basically downloaded the test bank and put it onto Moodle, and then use it for the final exam purposes. And because I think it is not necessary for people to memorize everything, so I told the students you can use Google if you want to look up definitions. Okay, you can go to Wikipedia, look up definitions, look up how other people explain the concept. That's okay with me. And not one, but multiple.
So sorry.
That's okay. The first class,
I thought it was off.
it happens once in a while, no problem. Okay.
I'll download it.
Yep, it's okay. It happened to me, and that's why I got it. Okay, so getting back to my exam with a test bank. So not only one, but multiple students used Google. They copied the question text and pasted into Moodle directly, and found the solution. Because somebody posted the entire test bank online.
There's many classes like that.
Yep. So my question to you is, according to this definition, should those cases be counted as dishonesty or not? Okay, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide.
It is kind of dishonest, but I mean, if you Google it, lots of the flashcards and stuff pop up, and they have the same stuff right there. So it's like, how do you not?
I would say it's kind of gray, because on one hand I said it's okay to use Google, okay, and the student just said I use Google, but on the other side I have this requirement or this description, and basically say that the result of assessment has to reflect the academic competency and performance of a student. So looking up the answer from a test bank is different from looking up, say, Wikipedia. Okay, so let's say the question is asking if a DNS server is not operational, or if you cannot contact a DNS server, what would be the result? Okay, it's a multiple choice test. Okay, if you just look up DNS server or DNS itself, it explains what it is, but it doesn't tell you exactly what happens when the service is down, when you have no access to a DNS server. So you still have to make the connection and say, oh, so that means domain names cannot be translated into IP addresses. So that means of all the answers, if one of the answers says, if you enter the IP address, you will still be able to get to a website, but if you use a domain name, it won't be able to get to a website, that would be the correct answer. And by looking up the definition of DNS, it's okay, because you're just looking up, okay, what does that mean? And then you have to still use your own mind to work out the logic, make the connections, and figure out which one is the answer. Looking up a test bank key is different, because it does not require processing. Are you guys seeing the difference between those two? So I would say it's a borderline, but it's definitely leaning heavily on the dishonesty part. Okay. This class, you don't have to worry about your borderline cases like this, because we don't have multiple choice tests, nor do I use test banks in this class. So we have open-ended tests, and I make new questions every semester. It's a lot of work on my side, but I think it's good. All right, and I can also retroactively re-examine submitted and graded work, if I have any reason to suspect anything. All right, so the unpleasant stuff is mostly over. Grading. This is the pleasant part, or at least most people think it is. This is the letter grade equivalence chart. Anyone with less than 12.5% of all the possible points will get an F. I don't think anyone is going to say, "Wow, but that's really harsh, man." I mean, even to fail the class with an F, I need to get. If I don't want to fail, this class with an F, I have to get at least 12.5% of all the possible points. I think that's reasonable expectation. A D, is going from 12.5% to 37.5%. Okay, if you get 37.5% exactly, that's a C. You're passing this class to move on to the next one. Okay, 37.5%. A B starts at 62.5%, and an A starts at 87.5%. So this
class is really hard.
Yeah. I would just put it this way: you can actually look up on the internet. You can look up the grade distribution, historical, grade distribution of any class, of any college and university. You can actually look it up online. That's public information. And you will see that the ABCDF distribution of this class matches an equivalent class at a UC.
Is that a yes?
It means I think in my mind, if you get a B or an A out of this class, you'll be well positioned for the next class. If you get a C out of this class, you might find the next class difficult. If you get a D or an F out of this class, it might be of best interest to you to take the class again, because you're not ready to move on to the next class. And that's why we have grades, is to basically, it's a feedback so that you know whether you'll be ready for the next classes, or whether this is a proper career option for you. And I don't say that with any type of mean attitude to it. I say it just because it is. I mean, some people are just not suitable for certain things. Like me, NBA, I don't think so, right? Or anything that involves art, okay? I don't think so either. If you look through my website, you will see that, wow, that's all black and white, because that's all I can do, okay? So no art classes for me, no achievement in art, music, or athletic stuff, okay? So it's the same way with programming. I mean, there are certain people who just find it more difficult than other people, and that's okay. All right, so moving on. And some people can make the connections like right away. Okay, this is how the points are broken down, in this entire class. Throughout the entire semester, there will be some homework assignments. All of the homework assignments will only add up to 20% of your final grade. Okay, 1/5. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough to make a difference if everything else is okay. Final exam is a heavy one. It's 40% of your final grade. And some people can make the connections right away and say, oh, so that means if I ace the final exam, and get all 40% out of this chunk, I can pass the class with a C already. And the answer is yes. There are very few people who do that, okay? Miss all the homework assignments, flunk exam 1 and exam 2, and just say, I'm just gonna ace the final exam and walk out of this class with a C. The first and the second exams, these are midterm exams basically. Each one will make up 20% of the final grade. The first exam will occur at about 1/3 through the class, so about week 5 or week 6. The second exam is going to be about week 11 or week 12 or so, which is about 2/3 through. The thing about exam 1 and exam 2 is that if someone is not even here to take the exam, it is also missing the role on that day. So that means people have to show up just to be counted as being present. And that's something that people do not understand is the exam is not just for assessment, but it's also a means to take attendance. All right. Are there any questions about this particular page? Yep. Go ahead.
Since we don't have computers in here, all these tests are they just?
They're all on paper.
Or
Yep.
are they online?
They're all on paper because this class, and basically all the sections of this class, they are too big to fit in the computer lab. So I can't use online tests for this class, so it'll all be paper-based, which is more difficult for me to grade, but since it's open-ended anyway, so it's okay.
No quizzes?
Hmm?
No quizzes? Just the exam?
No, I don't do any quizzes, but I can give you guys questions of the day, or something for you guys to think about before the next class, for those of you who want to kind of get some more practice, but it won't be graded, it won't count to your actual grade. All right, moving on. Grading FAQ, score is assigned based on observable academic competence and not effort, because I have people asking me and say, why am I getting this low grade? I spent a lot of time studying for this class. Well, unfortunately, as much as I can trust that person actually spending the time to study for the class, the grade is based on observable academic competence and not how much time or effort somebody has put into it. In other words, amongst this class here, I'm pretty sure 1 or 2 people do not even have to study for this class and be able to ace it. Okay? Because that person already has the competency for programming and logic and math and stuff like that. On the other hand, there might be people who can try very hard and still not be able to get a good grade out of this class. Okay? But that may be an indicator that programming, is not a, really suitable career for that particular person. And to me, it is better to realize that early on, because this is the first of all the programming classes, than to make that realization much later. I'm not telling people to give up, but I'm just telling people to be honest to themselves and say, well, is this what I'm good at? Is this what I'm interested in? Okay. I know a guy, who is a TA at UC Davis when I came from UC Davis too, and he was the TA of a senior design class, which is the very last class that people take in year 5 in an engineering program. And he basically, he's really point blank too, so he just walked up to that person and go, have you considered switching your major to something that has absolutely no science nor engineering in it? He just walked up to that person and say, have you considered, switching your major to blah, blah, blah. And remember, this is not the first class of the entire engineering track. This was the last class. Basically, they call that the final year project class. Okay, so he's point blank. He just told that person. He did not tell me the response of the other person, but I cannot imagine that person being very comfortable, when faced with a question like that. I don't have any multiple choice questions at this point. It's not going to be useful. Some questions are graded based on key indicators, otherwise known as rubrics. So I will make the rubrics really clear when I disclose the answers. I cannot disclose, the rubrics ahead of time because the rubrics by themselves would indicate what the answer is supposed to be. Okay, so I can only do that afterwards, but it will be published and everybody can see it, so that you guys can see whether you're getting your grade fair, because you can compare to other people and say, well, you missed that, I missed that. Oh, we both got the same amount of points marked off. Okay. I do not take any late submissions other than the ones that are excused because of the reasons that we talked about already. And usually it is just a good idea not to procrastinate and get to the homework assignments as early as possible. All right, tips. Helping a fellow student, because I've spent so much time to talk about academic dishonesty. Most people may be thinking, so what if somebody approaches you and say, well, I'm having some problem with the homework assignment, can you help me out? What would be your response? No, because TAC is going to consider that dishonesty, so I'm going to save you some trouble. Just go back and work on that yourself. Okay? It was not the intention. Okay, that was not the intention of the discussion. I think helping out a fellow student is helpful. Okay, but it also has certain conditions to make it a beneficial experience to both parties. From my CISP 310 class, which is a really kind of difficult class, I have seen students going from average or even slightly below average to really good students in that class because, one, they actually spend the time to read the material, study, and ask questions, but also because they try to help out other students. Okay? When you're learning something, when I'm teaching something to you, you're absorbing it, reading the material, it involves one part of your brain to understand the concepts. But when you try to explain the same thing to somebody else, it involves some other parts of your brain. It makes even more solid connections within your brain when you try to explain something to somebody else, even if you already know that stuff already. Okay? So by explaining and helping out another student in this class, you may be helping yourself to gain a much better understanding or more deeper understanding, in the material. So knowing that, and also knowing, what I count as, dishonesty, how do you help a fellow student? Now, some people cannot be helped because they are expecting you. I'm saying it, straight, just because some people are not expecting you to help them understand the material. Some people are expecting you to give them just the answer. Those people cannot be helped anyway. On the other hand, if the other person is genuinely not understanding the concept and want to understand the concept and be able to answer the questions or do the homework assignments themselves, then what you can do is to ask questions. When someone asks you a question like, how do I do this? Okay, then your replying question can be, okay, which part are you stuck at? Okay, and if the person points out and say, I can work out this algorithm all the way up to this point, and then I am stuck. Okay, I don't know what to proceed. Okay, then you can say, okay, what is your understanding of this particular mechanism? Show me an example of your understanding of this mechanism. If that person says, well, I'm not understanding it at all, and that's why I cannot proceed, then your question can be, okay, so which part of the notes have you gone through, and which part is, what is the starting point where you do not understand? Okay, so keep asking questions. So instead of giving that other person, a straight answer like, oh, this is it, this is that, and so on and so forth, keep asking questions so that person can find the solution and gain, the whatever is missing, by himself or herself. So that's my advice, when you help out a fellow student. It's really a good thing to help out somebody else. It can be beneficial to both parties. It just has to be done in the right way. Financial aid and enrollment of future classes, these topics are here because somebody could not get financial aid or to get enrolled in the next class because that person was caught copying an answer in a final exam and therefore getting a bad grade. So getting a grade of D would mean financial aid it has impact to financial aid as well as enrollment of the next class. This part talks about study habit. It basically just says, if you can read ahead of me during the class, just have a piece of paper and pencil, even though everything is recorded. Still get ready. Be ready to write down something, because there are occasionally something that I think is not very important. I just kind of mentioned it casually. But you might think, oh, this is it. Okay, this is the key concept to me that I think is important. So you can just write that down. If not for anything else, if you plan to review my lectures using YouTube, think about it. Okay, how do you review a class using YouTube? Do you play the entire clip from beginning to end? Probably not. Okay, if you're already here, being present and actually paying attention, most of the time, I would say 90% of the class, you don't have to actually watch again. It's only about 10% that you say, well, I kind of heard what he said, what Tax said, but I'm not quite getting how that concept works out, or I need to see how he's doing the example again. It's probably only about 10% of the time of the entire lecture. So what you can do is write down on your piece of paper, when I start on a particular concept, especially something that you think is, oh, this is important, or this is new, okay, this is definitely going to change the way we do things from now on, just write down the timestamp, okay? Oh, it's 11:16, okay, just write that down on your little note. So that way, when you go to my YouTube clip, you know where to fast forward to, to exactly that point. Then you don't have to watch the entire thing all over again or try to scan for that particular topic. After the class, just study again, okay? Just go through the material, whatever you write down, just to make sure that you're not missing anything after the class. When we have homework assignments, start on that as soon as possible. I know I'm starting to sound like a dad, because I am. Procrastinating doesn't make the work any less, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's the overall syllabus, and we have a schedule, basically a rough outline of when we'll talk about what concept. Okay, that's basically what it is. Are there any questions about the syllabus itself? If there are no questions about the syllabus, I'm going to point you to an activity. The first thing you can do in this class is what I call the Syllabus Acknowledgment. Okay, so I'm going to click it. You don't have to do it. I know some people have a cell phone and you can actually do it, but I'm not gonna. You don't have to do it right now. So when you do it, it will say, number of attempts allowed is 1, which means you can only do it once. Okay, you cannot come back and do it later. And it is not even something that involves programming concepts. Okay, I'm just gonna let you read the question here. This activity lets you acknowledge that you know where to find the syllabus and that you have visited the links, read and understood the syllabus. Do not submit this choice until you have done all of the above. Okay, it's not timed. It's not like it will give you like 30 seconds and you have to read the whole thing and then do the answer. You have the links here, and then you have 2 choices. Okay, as your answer. I think the answers can be scrambled, so you may not see the A and the B the same way as it is ordered here. Option A is, I refuse to acknowledge, please drop me from this class. That's an option. And B is, I, the student of this course, of the course that this choice activity is a part of, my grammar is kind of messed up there. Acknowledge that I know where to find the syllabus and that I have read and understood the content of the syllabus in its entirety. So it's basically just an acknowledgement that you know where to find it, you have read it, and you understand it. Okay, so most people, I hope, will select this choice here, and then you click next, and then you can say submit all and finish, and then you get 1 point. Yes?
Did you have any requirement for a textbook?
No. There are no textbooks. All the texts that you need for this class are already on the website. So Moodle has links to everything that I use to teach this class. Thank you.
Let's say someone accidentally clicks the wrong one. Does it drop them automatically? Or
No.
I mean, maybe they.
No, it's not automatic. I actually get to read the whole thing and find out who answered what.
May I double check that real quick? I want to
Yep,
make
sure.
I just realized it's.
Now, this activity is important, even though it's only 1 point, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do conditional release for all of the homework assignments. That means if someone has not answered this question, that person will not be able to get to the homework at all. Okay, so you got to acknowledge the syllabus first, then you can actually get on with your homework assignments and other things. All right? Okay, so we have about half an hour left to actually talk about concepts related to algorithms and problem solving and stuff like that. So I'll start with topic 1. You can see topic 1 is already highlighted because I want you guys to know where we are at this point. But instead of starting with developers and algorithms, which is something that I wrote, I'm going to start with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, computer/math job outlook. Because I think it is important to keep an eye on what you want to accomplish in your career before we actually talk about the specifics of how do you get there. Okay? Are there any questions at this point? Yep.
I heard you mention that you're recording your lecture.
Yes.
May we record your lecture as well?
You may, if you want to, just to make sure that sometimes if I have any type of equipment failure, then you have a backup. Yeah, that would be fine with me. Yeah, and since we are already talking about that, I might as well show you guys how to get there. You just go to YouTube, and the easiest way is to go to some profs. Just look for some profs on YouTube, and it will show my channel as the first choice. Click my channel. If you have a Google account or a YouTube account, you can just subscribe to it. If you don't want to subscribe to it, all you have to do is to click videos. And what it does is it will show the recordings, listing the most recent one first. Okay, so that's the easiest way to find your class recordings for this class, and also all of my other classes where I do my recording. So is that helpful? If you subscribe to it, it will send you alerts or notifications when I upload new video clips. All right, so here we have a computer and information technology occupation outlook or list and stuff like that. Basically, it talks about all kinds of occupations related to ICT. ICT stands for information and computer technology. Basically the same words except it's arranged a little bit differently. It's no longer called CIS or Computer and Information Science. It's called CIT, which stands for Computer and Information Technology, because it's driven by technology more so than it is a science. Every time you see something that has a science word in it, it's not. Right? Chemistry is science in the word.
No.
Physics, astronomy, biology, social sciences, computer science. Okay, so you get the point. All right, so you want to look at this and say, okay, computer and information research scientist. That's the name of the occupation, or at least one of the names for that occupation. Job summary is computer and information research scientist invents and design new technology and find new uses for existing technology. They study and solve complex problems in computing for business, science, medicine, and other uses. And typically the entry-level requirement is a doctoral or professional degree, and the median pay in 2010 is $100,000-ish. Okay, so you can go through this list here and say, well, do I want to work on something like this? Do I want this as my career? Okay, and the list is pretty long. Well, I wouldn't say very long, but it does involve different types of jobs. I encourage everyone to take a look at this website, even if you're taking this class not because you want to get a CS or computer science major, but an engineering major or math major and other types of people. You will get to this website and be able to find descriptions for your type of job or the jobs that you think that you want to get into. Okay, so I think it's a really good resource. We pay for that already. It's a government website paid for by taxpayers, so might as well make use of it. All right, so we're getting back to my own notes here. This is something that I wrote myself. Yeah, let me pop up the font size just a little bit. Okay, so the first question, or not the first question, but the first point I want to make is it possible for us not to find a computer in daily life? Okay, in your daily activity, is it possible to avoid computers altogether?
You can run into the
It is not
wilderness.
possible. Yeah, it's really hard.
Quite difficult.
I went camping, okay, where there's no Wi-Fi signal. Okay, so you would think, oh, without Wi-Fi or even cell phone signal, the electronics would be rendered, not very useful. So I can just kind of stay and focus on nature and practice, mindfulness and all that good stuff. No, I was stupid enough to bring along my generator and my kids and the kids of the camper that I go with, and also the adults from the other family brought along, guess what?
Xbox.
iPads, DSs, Nintendo DSs, and a whole bunch of other types of electronics. They do not require internet access because the DS can network by themselves. So they were doing Lego battles, like I would say, 4 hours a day. But that's okay because the other adult, was playing his Plants vs. Zombies 5 hours a day, or until his iPad is completely discharged. And then the guy would wake up early in the morning, start up his van, and try to charge his iPad until the ranger drives by and say, no generator in the morning. But I'm just starting my van. Well, you're using it as a generator, so cut that fuel, and cut the engine so the other campers can sleep a little more. Yep, so it's pretty hard to avoid technology. So let's just say that we do not bring along any of these electronics. Okay, so for camping, or what I would consider camping, we still drive around in our cars. You know what?
Computers.
I'm using computers again. Can anyone guess how many computers are in a regular, typical Econo box that you buy off the lot today?
100?
Well, not quite there, but 7-ish, is the average number. Okay, you have one computer responsible for ABS, okay, anti-lock brakes, and that's a mandatory feature now. You cannot buy a car, that is new that has no ABS. Stability control is another computer. Engine control, yet another computer. Entertainment center, even if it is just a radio or DVD player, has its own computer. Okay, so we are talking about an average of 7 computers in a typical car today. So just by driving, you're already using a computer. Okay. Any questions at this point about how computers are really everywhere and they're used for just about everything? No questions? Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
I drive a 69, it doesn't have any computers.
Yeah, that's kind of nice because it's not. It cannot be disabled easily either.
That's why it has the bar on the stick.
Oh. Yeah, but the pace where computers are put into cars and what they can do, if you just look at the pace, it is actually quite amazing too. Okay, 69, no computers whatsoever. But now, if you get a Mitsubishi Evolution, okay, that car has computers that can basically help you stay on track with traction, no matter what you do, right? Well, some of you know what it is, and some people may not know what it is. But basically, the computer will try to keep you safe, and even if you try to swerve and do all kinds of stuff that will normally spin out in an instant, the car will automatically adjust the throttle, braking, and other things to keep you on track and out of danger. That car will apply brakes unevenly more on one side, less on the other side, to make sure that you were not skipped. Yep.
Is that really a good thing? It kind of takes all the skill required to drive though.
Well, if you autocross, it's not a good thing. I autocross with my Miata, which has no stability control whatsoever. Not even anti-lock brakes. It was an option in 1996 whether to have anti-lock brakes or not. But these days, anti-lock brakes are not only mandatory, you cannot turn it off either. There's no option to turn off ABS. All right. Now, as amazing as computers are, let me show you something too. Right here. Because I want you guys to understand the history of computers, not for the sake of history, but for the sake of this, demonstrating how quickly things are changing, or apparently they're changing that quickly. Okay. So I want to show you Alan Turing computer. And here's the guy. I mean, he doesn't look like much, but he is considered the father of computer science. Okay, without him, there would have been no computer science, and we'll still be in the dark ages of using computers, and other types of computing machineries. And I want to show you the computer that he worked on, or that he helped invent. Let's see here. Does anyone know the name of the computer he worked on?
Thought it's his name.
No.
It's probably written here, but it's a machine, it's a computer, it's an electronic computer as opposed to a mechanical computer that already existed before his time. It's an electronic computer designed to decrypt or crack the encryption of the Enigma machines used by the Nazi German. Okay? So the machine was able to decipher the incoming messages as quickly as the transmitter can transmit. In other words, the Brits with this machine were able to decipher the message faster than the Germans, because the Germans were relying on a manual method to actually type it on the Enigma machine to decrypt it. So the Brits were able to read messages faster than the intended recipients, because it's automated using a computer. That's the original purpose of the modern day electronic computers, is for cracking encryption.
Is it Delilah?
Delilah?
Machine? Delilah? It's on
No.
the
You could probably type his name and say his computer on Google or Google Images.
It's on the contents.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. 3.4?
3.4.
Sounded like what you're describing.
That's a speech device. It's not a speech device. Though.
What about 3.2? Yeah.
It's HUD 8, I think.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. But it was really amazing, because they were doing they were cracking the encryption by hand initially, using certain types of weaknesses of the encryption scheme. But later on, when the Germans added one more wheel to the encryption machine, it increased the possible cases to a point where it is not practical for humans to crack the encryption anymore. And that's why he came in and basically designed and helped design the computer to do the encryption using one of the first electronic computers. Okay. And that's the origin. That is the origin. Let me see if I can pull a picture of the size of that thing. It's really, really big.
You should be able to just go to the Wikipedia page.
Like this one?
Yeah.
At 8. Is a section. Code breakers. I was looking for the computer. This is how we can spend like the entire day on Wikipedia. There was someone actually did a study, and most people spend more time on Facebook and social websites than any other place on the internet, I probably spend a lot more time on Wikipedia and all kinds of other wikis, not just Wikipedia, more so than other websites. This is an electromechanical computer used by cryptologists to help decipher German Enigma machines. So this is the one. It's pretty big. Let me see if I can find the size of it. This is the encryption machine, by the way. It's about the size of a typewriter. Okay, the encryption machine itself is only that big. The decryption machine, which is the cracking machine, is really, really big. It has a lot of wheels. It doesn't show the size of it. Well, I guess this is a good picture of the rear part of the machine. Just scanning for pictures. Okay, well, I think that's a really good picture of the size of the machine. The computation power of this thing is probably less than your watch. Okay, by today's standard, it is less than your watch. Most people might have heard of Moore's law, M-O-O-R-E, Moore's law. Moore's law says the speed of computers will double every 18 months without, at the same price range. Okay, so we're talking about at the same price range, a computer or computers in general will double the speed every 18 months. So from the time when this was invented, 1942-ish, to now, how many 18 months have passed?
Not a lot.
Quite a bit, right? And if Moore's law is the same, since that time, we are looking at computers that are immensely faster than the computers used back then. Is that making any sense? Let's not even go that far. Okay, let's go back to the computer that you use first. Okay, many of you are quite young, so we are talking about a much shorter time frame. Okay, so what was your first computer?
Yep, dual 5 1/4 now hard drive.
Okay.
I forget what name it was, but that was the first one I had.
Well, let's look at my previous machine. Okay, that's pretty recent, right? My previous machine, or the motherboard on my previous motherboard of my personal computer, had a Q6600 processor. It's a quad core, it's a Core 2 quad core processor, which at the time was pretty good. Okay, and you can compare that to a high-end i7 today. What would be approximately the difference between these two in terms of computation power?
Just double.
It's more than double.
Like 3, 4 more times.
Well, when did this Q6600 first came out? That's a few years ago. Okay, about 3 years ago at least. I would say more than 3, because I keep my computers for a long time before I upgrade. And the i7 is current, so we are talking about 2 18 months periods. So you can expect at least 4 times. If I remember correctly, it was close to 10 times in terms of raw processing speed. Okay, and that's over just a few years. Okay, but that pace is being kept up. People keep thinking that we are running out of room for more.
Wasp on your right shoulder.
Oh,
Go brush it off outside or something. Don't go on it. You just got a wasp on your right shoulder.
did you get smacked?
Or just go outside. Go outside and brush it off.
Did you get stung?
Not yet.
That's
There
right.
you go.
What is it?
And one more time.
It's flicking to the other guy.
He's still alive too. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, wasps are they are tough, man. I mean, but you guys will see more bugs in your career that are far nastier than something they can just swat. It's like, yeah. Yeah, wasps are particularly nasty. I have a little toy called a bug assault. Okay, this is the name of that thing. It's bug assault. Okay. That's literally, you can look it up. That's the name of the product. It looks like a yellow miniature shotgun. It has a little reservoir on the top. You can just pour table salt on it into the reservoir, and you cock it like a shotgun, and then the sight will pop up, and then you have to release the safety to shoot it, right? and it shoots out just a pinch of salt, and the effective range is only about this much, and it can blow a small hole on a piece of paper, not this kind of paper, but napkins. Okay, it can blow a small hole on a napkin at point blank range. I try to shoot myself, with that thing. It would not penetrate skin at all, point blank. So it's pretty safe, Still, you don't want to shoot somebody else in the eyes, though. That would definitely hurt. Salt, okay. And I tried that thing on wasps. Did not work at all. All it did was to make the wasps kind of angry. It was intended for flies. Against flies, no problem. But wasps, no. Definitely did not work. What is the cleaning agent? Magic Green? Green Magic?
Simple Green.
Simple Green, that's it. Simple Green works really well on wasps.
Really?
Yes, so
WD-40 does too.
WD-40? Okay, here's the question. Do you select the lit option?
No,
Okay.
It just kills it.
There are some really crazy YouTube videos, do not do this at home, okay? Somebody went through like a whole garage of spray paint and spray whatever to find out what can create the best or the most impressive flame when they light it up. Definitely not advisable, because if that thing is so flammable that the flame can go back to the can itself, that can be very dangerous. So anyway, I think I digress a lot, too much. So getting back to here, so within the past 50, 60 years, you can definitely tell that the hardware of computers have changed a lot. Okay, we are talking about electromechanical computers with disks and discrete vacuum tubes inside, all the way to the ICs that we have today. And even within ICs, which stands for integrated circuits, the size of transistors have shrunk tremendously over time. Okay, when we thought that we cannot shrink it anymore, Intel and AMD would find new ways of shrinking transistors even more and pack more stuff and increase the speed of processes even more. So from the perspective of electrical engineering, there has been a lot of changes over the past 60 years or so related to computers. What about in software?
Can't keep
What
up.
about the theory of computing? What about that stuff that Alan Turing came up with? Has not changed at all. Okay, that has not changed at all. Really? C came out in 1970 or so. Before that, we have COBOL, we have Lisp, we had Fortran, and then in recent years we have Java, and then we have Python, and then we have all these other programming languages. What do you mean by no progress in software? Well, they're just programming languages. Okay, they can all express about the same kind of solution to a problem. That has not changed. Okay, now people used to have to program in assembly language, which means they can only specify very small chunks of operations. That means programs tend to be really long, really tedious. And now these days you can write VB scripts, you can use MIT Scratch and not even have to learn the syntax of a programming language. But it doesn't really change the nature of software or writing programs. Programs that you can write today with using Scratch or some of the high-end user interfaces can still do just about the same stuff that people used to be able to do, and vice versa. So that really has not changed. That is really interesting because the fundamental concepts of programming really has not changed. Now, what is software? How would you guys describe software?
How the machines communicate and process input to produce an output.
I like the how part. Okay, but software is basically instructions for the hardware. Okay, the machine here has what you can see is hardware. That's the hardware of the machine. Software is something that you cannot see. It's basically the instructions of how to do something. Okay, and that's basically software. So basically say here that software is the specification of how hardware components should operate. Okay, so one is basically the thing, the mechanical or electronic thing that works. The other one is how is it supposed to work? How are these instructions supposed to execute in the right order to get something done? At the core level, processors can only perform very simple operations. I teach this class, but I also teach cisp300, which is assembly language programming. In that class, we only talk about instructions that can only add, subtract, compare, and some other really fundamental small things like transferring, copying one thing to another place, that sort of thing. So beneath all the high-level programs that you'll be writing in all the other classes, down at the core level, a processor can only do very simple things. So it's really the ordering of these operations that makes a computer or a program powerful. So software is the component that specifies how operations should be performed in a logical order to accomplish specific tasks. So that really is what software is. And this class is about algorithms. Algorithms is not exactly software, but software is the manifestation of algorithms. Are there any questions at this point about computer science, software, the advances of computers, and stuff like that? Can anyone think of something that will fundamentally change what Alan Turing came up with in the 40s? Or in the 50s. I think he did a lot of the work in the 50s too. It's happening, but happening kind of slowly at this point.
Artificial intelligence?
AI? Well, AI is interesting, but AI still has to run on certain platforms. Yep. Quantum computing, exactly. So Alan Turing did not account for quantum computing. So once we get to quantum computing, computer science itself will see a huge, big change, because everything that we knew about computing and writing programs, what is possible and what is not, all of that stuff will basically, well, it's not tossed out of the window, but it will be expanded to account for, quantum computing. Okay, but until that time, when quantum computers become, commonplace, what we talk about in this class will remain useful for another, 20 years, 30 years. I think quantum computers are quite a bit far out, at this point. Do you guys know, how long, what is the projected date when, quantum computers can become actually useful? Do you guys know?
No.
Yep. I think they're still working out the gate at the gate level, of quantum computers. So they're not quite ready to put things together to become a useful computer.
I don't even think they've made more than 5 bits, well, qubits. So it's pretty far away.
Plus, the theory can also be developed well ahead of the actual devices. Okay. Software is everywhere, so that means, occupations, careers, and jobs. Okay. In the past, when I say in the past, I'm only saying about 10 years ago. When people think of computers, they think of desktop computers, they think of laptop computers, and notebook computers. But these days, when we think about computers, it's well beyond that point. What is this? It's not a cell phone. It's a computer pretending to be a phone. That would be the best way to describe it. Because, okay, when you use your cell phone, your smartphone, what is the percentage of time when you actually call someone with voice?
Very little.
5% or less, right? Most of the other time, what do you use it for? Games, email, texting, pictures, okay, as a camera. What else?
Social media.
Social media, okay. What about your calculus class? How can this be useful in your calculus class?
Apps for that.
There are apps for that. Can anyone name one app that can help you in a calculus class?
Wolfram Alpha.
Wolfram Alpha, yes. It's not only useful for calculus, it's for anything that has to do with science or math. Okay, Wolfram Alpha is only $3 too.
And step by step. Like, it's not like it just gives you the answer. It's step by step how to do everything very clear.
Yep, exactly. Okay. What else do we do with these things?
Calculator. Calculator.
A calculator, okay.
Drop it.
What is that?
You drop it
Drop it
on the floor.
on the floor. Drop it on the floor. Okay, I thought it was the name of an app. Drop it. It's like, hey, what does it do then? Yep, go ahead.
I guess at its most basic level, it's a tool.
It's a tool, but you can also tell the potential of software development on this, right? I'm teaching a class called cisp300. It's Mobile Device Programming 1. Okay, and the possibilities of what kind of program you can write on these things is far more than the possibilities of programs that you can write on this thing. Okay, because this thing has cameras, has a microphone, has all kinds of devices already on it. And you know what? The best part of this is it can stay with the user the whole day. And that changes everything, because now you can write apps that require the phone to be with the person, the user, the entire time. We are running out of time. We'll continue this on Thursday, and I'll upload the video clip as soon as I can.
You should look at Tasker for Android. It's basically a far more complex version of the whole scheduling thing you have.
Okay.
You can essentially schedule